Tonight on Q2, trouble over tariffs.
As these taxes go into effect, food prices are expected to rise, meaning more pain for grocery shoppers.
It does have a pretty significant impact on the prices that you and I pay on any given day.
Plus, in the hands of the jury.
Jackson is heard yelling, "Hot, hot." He is screaming for his mother.
The defendant takes the stand in his own trial where he's accused of killing his young stepson.
And ICE agents raid a construction site in Bigfork, arresting 17. We'll have the details.
The MTN 530 news starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Well, good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Andrea. Lutz. President Donald Trump officially imposing steep new tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico. The decision already setting off retaliatory actions from other countries, leading to a possible escalating trade war.
It's a move that some worry could lead to you paying more at the grocery store. With more on this and the snowball effect it could have, here's our Matt Carmack.
Just Tuesday, the CEO of Target, Brian Cornell, said he expects grocery prices to rise within the next couple of days. But we wanted to see how local shoppers here in Montana would be impacted by those tariffs. It's a word you've probably heard everywhere in the past couple of weeks.
April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs.
Tariffs, a tax on foreign goods imported into the United States. Here in Montana, most of our imported goods from Canada are petroleum, wood, and animal products, while we heavily rely on produce like strawberries and avocados from Mexico.
I'm really not worried about it one bit.
Billings resident Greg Hyder says he isn't concerned about the new 25% tariff on Mexican and Canadian goods.
To me, it really just boils down to a negotiation tactic. It's really what it's going to come down to. I mean, Canada has been tariffing us.
But many economists argue that negotiation tactic could have big impacts on your wallet.
It does have a pretty significant impact on the prices that you and I pay on any given day.
Robert Snora with the University of Montana says that while businesses and producers pay the tariff, the tax is ultimately passed down to the consumer.
It's going to raise prices for anything that we buy that's imported from Canada and Mexico.
Here in Montana, that can mean paying more at the grocery store, especially for produce we can't grow in the state.
Produce is very seasonal, and yet people want that produce throughout the year. Whereas things like wheat, barley, beef, potatoes, those are things that even in Montana, we can produce that year round.
Ian Finch runs a food access program at Farm Connect Montana. It's an organization that connects SNAP benefit recipients to affordable, locally grown food.
Our position now is, we hope people really look to local food sources because when, for instance, during the COVID pandemic, when we saw shelves empty, the local food was still there.
Ian says that at a time with high tariffs and inflation, locally grown food may be more affordable than what's at the grocery store.
Consumers are going to turn to these for support when the general grocery store price is higher.
But because the tariffs are new, Robert says the full future impacts are still a question mark.
We're all facing a lot of uncertainty, and no one knows what the outcome is going to be.
In Billings, Matt Carmack, MTN News.
The tariffs also causing some pretty big concern for one sector where Montana leads the nation, agriculture. Paul Canning is a Northeast Montana farmer, and he says when the U.S. imposes tariffs, farmers often suffer in the form of retaliation. He says the timing is far from ideal because farmers are already recovering from previous tariffs on China and India. Those tariffs cut worldwide exports by roughly 37%. He also says, but no recourse for the people producers rely on to get the products to the market, that they can lose industry partners. Canning says he has no idea how long these will last, but hopes it's short-lived.
We don't want this to drag on, through the summer and into harvest. We certainly don't want that. And we also would like him to be enduring and persistent and lasting. So we don't want to go through this 2 or 3 years down the road also.
Canning is the chairman of the U.S. Dry Pea and Lentil Council Board and says they have made their voices heard in Washington.
Well, there are certainly many who are concerned about tariffs. Some argue they will ultimately create more American jobs. President Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have argued that tariffs deployed during Trump's first term did not boost inflation and say the potential upside far outweighs any negatives. The Brookings Institution, a centrist think tank, points to tariffs imposed on imported washing machines in 2018, leading to 1,800 new U.S. jobs at Whirlpool and other manufacturers. The president and many of his allies argue that tariffs will incentivize companies to produce more domestically.
Closing arguments have wrapped up and a verdict is near in the deliberate homicide trial of Christopher Riesinger.
He took the stand this morning, providing his own defense after being accused of beating and drowning his 4-year-old stepson back in 2021.
Our Haley Monaco was in the courtroom all day. She joins us with the latest.
On Wednesday,
did you cause the death of Jackson?
No, I did not.
Defendant Christopher Riesinger took the stand.
What did you say, sir?
I said no, I did not.
Did you love Jackson?
Loved him with all my heart.
Riesinger is facing charges of deliberate homicide after allegedly drowning his 4-year-old stepson Jackson Gatlin in a bathtub full of extremely hot water in October of 2021.
How much water was in the tub relative to Jackson's body shape configuration?
The water was only filled just below his belly button.
And was there an issue with the hot water at the trailer?
Yeah, I mean, if there was something else going on as far as like a sink.
Riesinger was mostly calm as he was questioned by attorneys, but delivered powerful testimony before the trial then moved to closing arguments.
And you heard, Jackson was beat with a spatula, he was kicked to the floor, he was slapped in the face, he was placed in hot water.
The prosecution also played recordings of an interview police conducted with Jackson's mother.
And how did he sound when he was saying that? He was screaming for me.
The defendant wasn't in that bathroom to lend a helping hand. The defendant was in there to exert his control, to assert his control. Jackson is heard yelling, "Hot, hot." He is screaming for his mother.
The medical examiner's report indicated several possible factors for the little boy's death, noting brain swelling caused by possible drowning, hyperthermia, and blunt force trauma to the head. The defense argues Riesinger did not drown or beat the 4-year-old, but other medical ailments caused his death.
We want to remind you that this gentleman's freedom is at stake. That's why we have the presumption of innocence. We hope you will take sufficient time to decide this case, and we ask you to acquit Mr. Riesinger on all charges.
The jury is deliberating a final verdict. In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
ICE Homeland Security investigations work with Spokane Border Patrol to take 17 undocumented immigrants into custody in Bigfork. Details of the raid were posted on social media saying ICE HSI agents acted on a tip, set up an operation at a construction site. The agents served a notice of inspection at the work site and found 17 undocumented immigrants. All undocumented immigrants were taken into custody and found ineligible to remain here in the United States. Flathead County Sheriff Brian Haino says his officer was not involved with the raid and believes ICE is running their own civil warrants. We did reach out to ICE but have not heard back.
Well, it's such a nice day out there, and I'm stuck inside, so I thought I'll take you on a little tour around the state, see how things are shaping up. Out towards Miles City, where the sun is getting a little lower in the sky, we're sitting at 44 degrees, but the winds starting to increase. We're seeing those gusts up to 31 miles an hour, and we're going to talk more about wind as we get into the next few days. Looking out towards Helena, we've had some sunshine throughout the afternoon. 47 right now, only a little bit of a west breeze at about 7 miles an hour. The temperatures have been building up quickly since mid-morning. Here's a look out towards Great Falls, where temperatures are sitting at 43, a little bit of a northeast wind. As the winds shift in from the northeast in our areas, we start getting into tonight and tomorrow. That's going to have some impacts on where we're going to see snowfall. And speaking of snow, still a little bit on the ground as you take a look out towards Bozeman this afternoon. Temperatures have been a little cooler. We're sitting at 38 degrees right now. Snow moving into the forecast. We'll change that sun to snow. We'll show you in a few minutes.
Montana is no stranger to natural disasters, having experienced historic wildfires and floods, but response could be ramping up as these costly and deadly disasters become more common. It's a big focus for the Montana Red Cross's newest leader. Standing outside the Lockwood Fire Station, Executive Director Hannah Zuroff says the organization helps hundreds of people across Montana, mobilizing to disasters locally and across the country, even to Los Angeles. But that response will need to grow. She says last year they responded to 24 home fires in Billings and set up 7 wildfire evacuation shelters across Montana.
Extreme weather events are going through the roof, right? From last decade to now, we've seen double the events and an 85% increase in disasters costing more than $1 billion. So when you're thinking about it in that way, you know, scaling impact is really important for us, and we're really funded by the $20 gift. So
Zuroff says although the Red Cross is a national organization, they do take care of their home base first. She says they do get federal funding, which makes up about 3% of their budget, funded through the Department of Defense.